Welcome to Not What I Thought. I'm Erika.
I'm Yolanda.
And I'm Becca. We're therapists, entrepreneurs, and perfectly imperfect humans.
We first met during a business owner retreat where we became fast friends because we're not afraid to be real and ask the hard questions about life. What we thought it would be like, how messy it actually is, and the courage it takes to create the life we want.
We continue to build our friendship and personal growth through our own retreats. We find the deepest connection in sharing our struggles and finding what we have in common rather than what divides us.
We're breaking down hard topics on our podcast and together have conversations about what it takes to find real talk, real support, and real rest for professional women. We're glad you're here. Join us on your favorite podcast platform.
All right. Well, we've been talking about getting towards the end of the year, and especially since we met in business context, that usually means goal setting and planning for the next year, which can be, I don't know, a lot sometimes. But so I've been thinking about this idea of the fantasy life, and something that I learned in minimalism, or a technique that I learned, was that if you're trying to decide on whether to let go of something or keep it, one thing you can ask yourself is this part of my real life, or this is part of my fantasy life? Like, did I purchase this thing because
I love that question.
Yeah, the one I think about for me was I was on like a makeup kick for a while and watching YouTube videos and looking at cool stuff, and I bought this like blue metallic lipstick. Like,
oh, wow.
and it looked really cool at home.
Oh, wow.
Like,
at home. Yeah, where were you going to wear the blue metallic lipstick to?
no idea. None.
Church.
I mean, you could, not in church. I mean, you could wear it to the grocery store for sure, but
Yeah, I mean, you could, but
yeah.
that was definitely one during a declutter that I was like, why? That's the question I asked. Why did I buy this? Why am I holding this right now? And that was pretty much what came up. It was like, oh yeah, no, this isn't part of my real life. This is part of my, you have 5 hours to do your makeup and take some pictures and then you're done for the day kind of idea, I guess. Or that you can be a little bit more creative, right? With like your makeup or whatever you're doing. So I love that technique. I think it works really well. And so I was thinking about it last year, like, oh, that can apply to goal setting too, right? Like, are my goals part of my real life or my fantasy life?
Like, go back to goals, recheck what.
Right.
I mean, sometimes, I mean, we talked about this before, right? We're just kind of like, you just kind of put something on there that you're like, yeah, why not?
That sounds cool. Let's do it.
That would be fun, you know? And you're like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I can't do that because I have children. So like, but as I was like thinking about what I've been goal setting for, I guess, or thinking about like lately, the last couple of years, I was noticing that a lot of that has to do with business, or I feel like my fantasy life would look very different business wise, which I found a little surprising because I feel like I'm pretty intentional with how I run my current business. But a lot of it had to do with technology. Like in my fantasy life, I'm making courses and you just sell them and people buy them.
Put it out there and it just
happens. It's just passive income.
Exactly. So much passive income.
You don't have to work at all for it.
Yeah. And you just become, people follow you. They think you're brilliant and all the things without really doing any of the work. So yeah. That, and I think a lot of my fantasy life revolves around like wellness, like I guess like meditating every day, right? Or reading so many books a year. Somebody I'm friends with on Facebook reads a book a week. And so he posts like, every week a different book. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I can't do that.
Good for you, friend. Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool, right? But
sure.
I've definitely
And then
said,
you say it, I'm like, "Ooh, I want to do
I want
that."
to
And
do
then I'm
it.
like you, and I'm like, yeah, when is that gonna
Okay, so
happen?"
what is it that we do that someone else says what they're doing and we feel like we need to do the thing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
comparison thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As you were talking, Eric, I was thinking about a friend who a couple of years ago was doing a physical thing that like
Mhm.
for every week of the year, they would do 2 push-ups, sit-ups, um, why am I not thinking? Whatever, doesn't matter. I don't know, my brain is like falling apart. But anyway, um, so the point being, like week 1, you do 2 push-ups, 2 sit-ups, 2 of whatever the other exercise is, I can't remember, and you
Mhm.
increase. So by the time you get to week 52, you're doing 108 or 104 of these,
Mhm.
104 of those, or whatever. And I remember being like, "Oh, should I do that too?" Stop me like, "That sounds boring. I don't want to." Like, that is not my goal. But I don't know why it's so easy for us to go think like, "Oh, I should do that."
Mhm.
Anyway,
Mhm.
go back to what you're saying.
Well, I think it
Mhm.
kind of plays into it though, right? Like this fantasy life of I can do all the things I'm already doing, plus all the things that person is doing, because that sounds really cool. And I want to
Yeah.
do that too. And you're like, there's really only so much time and energy and resources, like
Yeah.
reality. And I think that's hard to accept. And then some of that
Yeah.
perfectionistic stuff comes up, that, we've talked about in a different episode, where, you have this goal and then you're like, okay, I gotta make it look exactly like this. And if it doesn't, then now what am I doing? I've messed it all up, and
Mhm.
the whole shame spiral. And that one for me can happen even in like simple examples. So in my fantasy life, my living room has all of the pillows, all of my pretty colored pillows that go on my couch. They all stay on the couch. That would be
That is a fantasy world for
it's a
sure.
fantasy world.
Do you have children or animals or anyone that lives in your house in addition to yourself? That's a
Pretty
fantasy.
much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then I adjusted it to, well, they don't have to do that all the time, but if they get there back at the end of the night, then that's my new fantasy life.
that counts.
Yeah. But that also doesn't happen. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, it's just so interesting to think about some of these things and like the way you could picture your life being if you kind of lived, in a different place and time or different circumstances, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. I have the business stuff, I have the wellness kind of area,
Mhm.
and then um a totally different place that I don't know where it comes from, but like that I have places to wear like fashionable items and that would make sense. And but I wouldn't want to go to any of the parties because I don't really like socializing. So I don't know where I'm wearing these garments or for what
I
purpose.
want to look cute.
I
Walk
want
out
to
the
look really
door,
cute.
take a snap a picture, and then go back and put my PJs on.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting looking at some of those things, but then I also can kind of get stuck in, okay, now I can identify like what's a fantasy life versus what's like real life. Uh,
Mhm.
but then some of the things that I would have considered fantasy life, I've actually been able to do.
Mm.
Mm.
And so that started challenging my paradigm once again, where, I started
Mhm.
thinking about, well, you start with some fantasy, but maybe you can just adjust it for your real life or a different pace, or it's going to look a little bit
Mhm.
different. So I do buy some fancy fashion items, right, or bags.
Mhm.
And so I take my sequin purple bag is my favorite one. I was going to grab it, but
Mhm.
I didn't. um and I take that to Target, and it's the best.
I love that. I love that.
Do you think that there is, okay, wait, let me start that question again. Um, I love this idea that like checking ourselves on, is this my fantasy life or is this my real life, can be really helpful in like kind of reining back in and setting stuff that's setting ourselves up for success, like for things that are
Mhm.
realistic. But I wonder, because of what you were just saying about some of the things that I thought were fantasies actually turned out to be true, like, is there some benefit in the fantasy life?
I think there's probably a lot, honestly.
Mm,
Yeah. Um,
mhm,
you both know I'm big on like experiments, right? So I say that everything
mhm.
can be an experiment. So based on a conversation I was having with my employee, like she was talking about, I want to be one of those people that wears like bright lipstick every day.
Mm,
So I was like, oh, you should do that. Like you could do that for like 30 days and then just see how it goes. She's like, no, I can't. I was like, well, let's do it together. Um, and so then that was an experiment, right? Like, am I the person that wears bright lipstick every day?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
no, but but it was a fun experiment. And I don't know, I like doing my experiments because it gives me a short enough time, like 30 days
yeah,
is short enough to know if you like something or not, I think.
yeah.
It doesn't feel so burdensome. And then if you do like it, you can figure out how to like actually integrate it in a way that feels
Mhm.
cool, you know?
Mhm.
I love your experiments, Erica. I love them. I love that you do them, and I love that you do them regularly, and they are so inspiring to me because that's helped me, like with my own rigidity, my own kind of it either is or it isn't. And just like, yeah, give it 30 days. I don't know. You don't know what it'll be like until you give it a try. And so oftentimes I will harness my inner Erica and be like, it's an experiment.
Do an experiment, see how it
Yeah,
goes.
See how
yeah,
it goes. I
yeah.
want to plop in there too that if you want to do an experiment for a week or 30 days or whatever, you don't actually have to wait until the first of the month,
Right.
first of the week. You could just start tomorrow and do
You
30
start
days from
whenever.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Just like we don't have to set New Year's resolutions or goals on January 1st. You could actually do
right.
them whenever you want for whatever time frame you want.
Hmm.
Just putting that out there.
Yeah,
I like that because
yeah,
as we're trying to get away from perfectionistic tendencies, you're like, but I have to start
yeah,
first.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Like, well, I guess I can start this in 14 days because today's the 16th. So
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
it's not even
That really that really helps remind me that, part of the experiment or part of me not falling into rigidity as much is to just remind myself, like, just one little small action. If I'm feeling stuck, it's like just one little thing. It doesn't have to be huge, and it can start now. It can start whenever. Yeah.
and it helps me a lot to remember that you can always change later.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That's
I
the
find
best thing
myself
about the
telling that to a
experiment.
lot of people that I either work with in therapy or in business coaching. Like, well, let's try this. And you know what? If it doesn't work, we could change it later.
Hmm.
Or you could do this for a while until you get bored of it, and then you could do something else.
I know.
You can always change later, especially if you're having a lot of um, anxiety or trepidation about starting something new. Well, what if I don't like it? Then you'll do something different.
Where does that come from for us? We're kind of questioning, like, where does this come from that we have this idea of like goals, or like, where does this come from that we think that whatever we start doing, that we're stuck with that for the rest of our lives, you know?
I have not figured it out, but I tried.
It's it's an interesting thought experiment, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first thing that popped into mind for me was capitalism. Just with this idea that like everything has to be productive
Hmm.
or monetized or
Hmm.
most efficient in some way.
Hmm.
And so if we look at something like hobbies, there's some people who don't want to do a thing because I'm not good at it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to paint because my art's not that good. Well,
Hmm.
but does it have value because it's an activity that you enjoy or that brings you
Hmm.
some benefit, like regardless of whether you produce a sellable product at the end,
Mhm.
right? Or
Mhm.
this trend that so many of us feel where we need to monetize our hobbies. We always got to have a side hustle for something. And I think in that context, something that we try and then abandon, or we try and decide we don't like and move, feels like a failure because it's connected to this like financial part,
Mhm.
right? I wasted money on that. I wasted time. I could have
Mhm.
been spending doing something else that would have brought me
Mhm. That
money
was productive. Mhm.
that was productive. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we don't celebrate enough the, I don't even want to, okay, so we see those things as failures, right? But we don't celebrate enough the process of discovery of
Right.
I tried something and I liked it or didn't like it, or it was
Mhm.
okay that this thing was just existed for me because it was fun.
Mhm.
I enjoyed myself.
Mhm.
That often isn't enough of a reason to do something, or we feel like it's a lesser reason. I don't know. That's,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's definitely part of it.
Mm. Yeah, I know my family of origin stuff, my self-worth was based on achievement and,
Mhm.
like, yes to everything you just said. And I don't even know if I would need money. Like, if I got a gold star
Oh,
on a
Mhm.
chart, like, I would be
Mhm.
just happy.
Mhm.
well, I mean, if we go to the other episode where I was talking about filling in my little squares, there is
Mhm.
something about taking the thing and making it visual, and I can see, look what I accomplished. It feels good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It does feel good, right? But yeah, changing again the approach and the mindset to maybe the number of squares that you color or the amount of books that we read. It's not um that's not even really important, but it's the process of doing that.
Can we go back to the blue lipstick, metallic blue lipstick?
Yeah.
So when it comes and you put it on for the first time, like, what was that experience like for you?
Um Honestly, a little shocking because it looks so different than like how I would look normally. So I guess maybe
Uh-huh.
a little anxious, like,
Uh-huh. It was like an uncomfortable shock
yeah, yeah,
because there's a part of you that's like that's not me.
yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then what, I mean, did you kind of put it in a drawer right away? Did
Yeah, it
you think to
went
yourself, maybe there'll be some time in the future, like maybe it'll happen at some point? Or did you kind of know right away, well, that's the end of that?
It's a really good question. I definitely did not have the conscious thought, "This is the
Mhm.
end of that," but
Mhm.
probably I knew that that was the case, because I liked to experiment with makeup or try different things. I would like s I have a 'cause I don't like anything out on the counter, so I have, like,
Mhm.
a tray that I pull out that has all my stuff in it, and so
Mhm.
I would switch things out of the tray, like, so every week
Mhm.
I could play with something different,
Mhm.
and
And
so
that never made it into the
never
tray.
made it into the tray.
So I think my next question then is, like, how did you interact with yourself based on that? Does that make sense? Like, oh my gosh, I tried this thing. I saw this thing. It looks really cool. I got it. I put it on. I was like, oh my gosh, that is not me. That feels uncomfortable. And, kind of let me put it in the drawer and see if it makes the rotation. Am I
Yeah,
understanding kind of your
yeah.
process so far? And then as you realize that it wasn't, like, what was the conversation between you and you? Because I can imagine that I would be really shitty with myself. Like, oh, you just wasted that money, and here it's just sitting here. And what were you thinking? And what made you think that, you could live a fantasy world of live you lived a life that included, metallic blue lipstick. So I don't know, that would be my process, but I mean, I would imagine that would be my process.
Yeah.
Were you able, like, did you, I guess what I'm asking is, like, when we realize that what our goal was or what we were hoping for is kind of this fantasy place, and that it's not attainable or even something that we actually desire, how do we hold ourselves in warm regard with that
Mm.
and not be like, oh, I wasted the time, I wasted the money, kind of what we were saying a minute ago.
Yeah. And maybe because we're talking about like a tangible thing, and I was in the midst of like minimalism, learning about it and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, then I think I was able to recognize pretty quickly, like, this is not something that I'm going to use. I've already spent the money on
Hmm.
it. So that doesn't matter. Like, that's already
Oh,
gone.
okay. Okay.
Um, and it's taking up place, and I have to,
Hmm.
I know this sounds a little silly, but I have to consider it in in the thing I'm going to pull out, right, for the next week.
Right. Yeah.
And then so that's wasting, it's extra thing I don't need.
Yeah. What I love, I think, about what I hear you saying is like there was already cost to it, like the financial piece. And then the longer you held on to it, the longer there were additional costs to having it and not releasing it.
Yeah, and I think over time I probably would have had some of that
Mm-hmm.
negative self-talk of like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you have to use it because you bought it, or
Mm-hmm.
okay, passed it over however many times, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
get rid of it or don't, like, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely
Okay.
see it happening.
Okay. That's cool. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
really helpful to me. I'm in a lifelong process of holding myself in warm regard during in situations, not beating myself up. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. So, Erica, in this letting go of your of this fantasy life, what does your heart know to be true?
My heart knows that I can let go of parts of my fantasy life, and that will actually make me a happier person. And it doesn't have to mean that, I didn't work hard enough, or I didn't do enough, or I was lazy. It just means that I can stay present in my real life,
Mhm.
and also bring in the parts of my fantasy life that I actually want to implement, and that means something to me.
Becca, what does your heart know to be true?
My heart knows that it's okay for me to have goals that fit with my real life and that I don't have to imagine that I am someone different in order
Mm.
to be happy or in order to have the things that I want. I don't have to live in the fantasy, right? If it's useful and it's fun, then great, but I don't, it's okay for me to just be me.
Mhm.
What
Mm.
about you,
Love
Yolanda?
that. Um, my heart knows that a big part of what drives my fantasy life is this thought of somehow being um, n- not bound by the time space continuum.
Mm.
And so, um, I can just kind of hold that in awareness when I have some kind of uh, big goal or big dream or big idea or big fantasy life about something that does not take the time space continuum in my energy and all of that into account. Um, I can start to acknowledge it as a fantasy and kind of be exploring the parts that are more realistic of it. Yeah.
You can create your
What
own
it,
experiment.
yeah, I can create experiments about it. Yes.
Love it.
Thanks for the conversation, Erica. It's great.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun one.
Yeah.
It was. We are so excited to announce our upcoming live event. Join us online on January 19th, 2025, where we'll guide you through the sometimes shame and guilt-ridden experience of setting goals for the year. We'll have real talk about how goal setting can lead to burnout and real support for visioning a 2025 that includes real rest, connection, and play. Go to notwhatithought.com to register. We hope to see you there.